What have you liked so far from Bruce Adams, obviously in his time, and just kind of some of the growth so far? I know it's early, but
Yeah, I would say Deuce, like all of our quarterbacks, there's a learning curve going on. Just new offense, new things being asked of him. A player that's played a little bit, but not a ton. I like his poise. I think he's a guy that doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and he's a good all-around player. He's got a really nice touch on the ball and has made some really good plays. Did it again today as well.
You've got a history with Mateos. Why does that combination work? What's maybe unique about him that makes him a good fit for what you do?
Yeah, so he and I go back to him being in my GA first at LSU, and then my line coach at two other places along the way. And so there are a lot of things that we do that he and I sort of came up with together, or maybe we late nights deciding how we're going to block a certain front. And so all that time that we've put together along the way for multiple years at three different stops, game planning different defenses, I think it just makes us more efficient with what we're doing on offense. And he sees the game the same way that I do, and he's a very intelligent guy, really creative thinker, and so there's a good balance between him and me. I think sometimes he might suggest something, and I go, "Wow, I never thought about doing it that way." And sometimes I might say something, and he says, "Yeah, but what about this look?" And I go, "Oh yeah, that's a problem." And he's a tremendous teacher. I think he does a great job finding a way to get the information across to every player in the room. And that's the job of a teacher, being able to be relatable enough that you can find a way to get that information across to a way that guy can actually take it and then apply it. And I think you're seeing improvement from our line.
The learning curve for a lot of these quarterbacks, you also will see mistakes in spring ball as quarterbacks learn the playbook. How do you kind of evaluate those mistakes this early in the process? Do you look for them to test things, or what's kind of your evaluation process this early?
Yeah, every day is an evaluation, but I think part of that growth is making those mistakes. And we've got as a coaching staff, we have to walk the line between not being willing to accept certain things, but also recognizing that along the way they have to make some of those mistakes in order for them to really learn. And so if a quarterback's going to throw a ball on from the boundary hash all the way to the field flat, and he doesn't know whether he can do that versus a certain coverage, or whether someone from defense is going to actually buzz the flat fast enough to take away that throw, he's got to try that before he recognizes where his limitations are. And quite honestly, we as coaches have to see that too. So yes, there are mistakes from the quarterbacks in all the positions, and to some extent that's not bad, as long as they're making new mistakes and they're not making the same ones.
Jeff, when you look back to last year, or you evaluated this offseason, how much of your ability to call plays was impacted by the injuries, and like what you would like to have been able to do? Was it limited at all? And do you feel like it
Well,
made
I
a big
think
difference?
your game plan and the evolution of your offense and the play calling, all of that is based on what you have. And certainly there were a number of times last year where that style of offense and the play calling changed to some extent because of the quarterback we were playing with, or the running backs that we had available for that game. And so sure, it's always impacted. Sometimes it changes a lot when you go from a quarterback who's maybe more of a pocket guy to a guy that's a little bit more elusive, more of a dual threat guy, and that's really obvious. But at times it might change if you don't have maybe your best tight end available. Maybe he's a big physical guy who can handle the defensive end on his own. And if I don't have that, then we've got to adjust how we're going to block certain things. And so, that's yes, that happens, and it should happen. That's my job.
Jeff, how frustrating was that?
I'm sorry?
How frustrating was last season for you, just not to be able to get it going probably the way you thought it might, or is that not the word?
Certainly frustrating, disappointing. I want the people of Wisconsin to feel proud of their football team. I want them to resonate with who we are and how we play offense and how we win games. Since I've been here, I've been to sports, athletic events of other sports as well. And I see the love and the passion that the people have for this place, and makes me want to win for them. And I felt really badly about that. And the great thing about the thing that you get to do as a coach is you get to make the decision every year to move forward. And while there's still a certain part of me and all of us who were here last year that weren't pleased with that, we don't even think about that anymore. Everything now is excitement about what we're going to do this year.
When you're integrating a handful of new coaches like you are on your offense, what's the process of doing that and taking them in some of their ideas and adjusting some of yours? How do you go about that in an off season?
Well, I think the first thing is bringing in guys who are the right fit, bringing in guys who understand and believe in the way that we're trying to score points, and the way, even on a larger scale, the way that we want to go about building the culture here of this team. And, I think the guys that we hired are that, so that makes it easier in terms of integrating new ideas. Every year is an opportunity to do that, and spring ball is kind of like a lab, so it gives us an opportunity to try some of those new things. And so whether it's a new running back coach who maybe has coached something a little bit differently than the way I've done it before, or whether it's one of our coaches who was here last year who's saying, hey, I studied this from the Rams this off season and they run this play like this. I think we ought to think about implementing it. I believe in being a great collaborator, and I think finding ways to enable everybody to feel like they have ownership is one of the things I really try to do. And so bringing in new guys just adds to that.
When you have a quarterback go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, as far as the coaches go, when, a couple guys left for other opportunities, and that gave you an opportunity to kind of bring in guys that you sort of handpicked yourself. I guess I wonder, how much does that help you in terms of getting, what you want this offense to be?
I don't know that in this specific case. I understand the question and appreciate it, and I do think in some cases there might be a positive effect when something like that happens. But I felt like when I was here last year, the guys that were here with us were on board with everything that Coach Vic and I wanted to do offensively, and so I didn't feel like there was anything that we were missing there. I would just say that when guys come in at this point, they're excited about what we're doing now. So I don't know that there's necessarily a difference in terms of my ability to do anything with these guys as opposed to the way it was last year.
When you have a quarterback as dynamic as Colton, who did what he did at Old Dominion, as a play caller, how do you strike the balance of how frequently you want to get him on the move and run him, knowing how physical the Big Ten is?
Yeah, well, I think if you make the decision to go and recruit athletic quarterbacks, which we have, all the guys we have now are guys that can run, whether you're talking about Colton or the other guys. When you make that decision to go that direction, then that's a part of your game, and you have to be willing to live with the fact that they are going to be exposed to contact a little bit more, maybe than a guy that's not in that position. How much you do that and how often you do that, I think, depends on the quarterback himself. Some guys are a little bit more durable than others. Some guys have the elusiveness to get out in the open field and just, they seem to never take a head-on shot. They find a way to just make a guy miss and get out of bounds. And, so being able to do things where we can protect them with the sideline and give them the opportunity to get out of bounds, or running them in the red zone where they have an opportunity to get a touchdown and hand the ball to the ref and maybe risk a little bit less exposure there. I think are a couple ways that you can do that. But yeah, they're going to get hit more, and that's something that we understand and are willing to live with. But I think to run the quarterback as much as you would a running back is not what any of us want.
Coach, I'm not sure that we've seen this much turnover with both the quarterback and receiver rooms. When it comes to learning the playbook this early on, have you changed the way that you've installed, or have you looked to simplify things to get these guys kind of on pace a little sooner?
Good question. I would say, we're all, as coaches, we're all experiencing a new era of college football, and I think there's a balance there between recognizing what your players can handle, but at the same time trying to get them ready for spring ball and then ultimately the season. And we did go slower, and bringing in new coaches, that is one way that bringing in new coaches sort of impacted us, because you got to catch them up to speed with the system as well. And so I would say we just went a little bit slower this off season. And so I don't know that I would say we've simplified the playbook. I would just say we didn't install as much as early as we had before.
Coach, Abu Sama has stacked several big-time highlight reel plays across his career. Just how much does that game-breaking potential impact the defense, and how much of a threat is it for the backfield?
Yeah, I really like Abu. I like Abu, and I like all of our backs. I think we've got a number of guys there, and the room really, to me right now, is marked by competition. We've got a lot of guys who I think are doing good things every day, and they're still all in that learning process as well. But Abu in particular, I loved his film, loved the way that he was able to run the ball in a lot of different ways when he was at Iowa State. I love the kind of kid that he is. He's incredibly hardworking, diligent, got a real tough mindset about him, and I think he's gonna do great for us this year. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that there are a lot of other guys in the room too that are doing well also. But really excited about Abu, and really has a knack for finding that next cut that can create extra yards for him.
What do you like the most about Hopkins so far?
I would say number one, just his mentality. I mean, he is mature beyond his years. His mindset is one that it's just what you want. Studies, works at it, confident but not arrogant, and just has that it thing that you want every quarterback to have. When he steps in the huddle, you kind of feel his presence, even as a young guy. And then his speed. A guy, that quarterback that ran a 10.6 in high school, that's legit speed, and it's shown up.
Perhaps it's too early to tell, but are there some guys who have stood out to you on offense as leaders in that locker room so far?
I would say the guys that have shown up to this point, I do think it is too early to tell, but I would say Chris Brooks. He's a guy that I think took on a leadership role for us last year, became more vocal. He's always been one of the hardest working guys, but now he's willing to talk a little bit more. And Tyrell Henry, also from the receiver room, a guy that you feel his energy in the huddle. And I think Colton has done that as well. I think he's becoming, every guy when they come in, we as coaches say, okay, now you're the leader, and they're going, I don't even know who these guys are. I don't even know where I'm going to the next meeting or something. But he has grown in that regard every week that he's been here.
I want to ask you about your tackles, with moving Haywood over to the right side and then PJ playing on the left side. So, I don't think he's played tackle, at least in college, too much. Just what were some of the things that kind of led to those decisions, and what do you like about them in those spots?
Yeah, I think they both could play either side, and we're still in the evaluation phase there. But PJ was an interesting guy because he did play more guard in games. However, as we got to know him and started recruiting him and started finding more film of him through various resources, we felt like he was a guy that really, even though he had played guard and sort of has a big physical guard's build, he's got tackle feet, and he's got an incredible wingspan. I can't remember what it is, but I stood up to him on the weekend that he came in on his recruiting trip, and we stood back to back, and I've got a pretty good wingspan, but he had me by that much on both sides, and so he's got incredibly long arms, which is great at either position, but certainly a tremendous gift for an offensive tackle. So I think both of them are tackles, and who ends up on what side, we've done a little bit of both with both of them. Just trying to find which spot both are most comfortable at.
That's right. I was gonna say, as far as following up on Haywood, I guess I just want to get your thoughts on, as he makes this comeback from this injury. What have you seen from him? What kind of stands out to you as you kind of watch him move around?
Yeah, I don't see any physical issues at all relating to the injury. I think he picked right back up where he was, actually ahead of where he was this time last year. Just seems to be a little bit more mature, and certainly sitting in meetings and being around has helped him prep for this moment mentally. But the thing I love about Kevin the most is his energy. He shows up every day and just wants to go put his face on somebody, and we need more guys like that.